Okay, hi guys. So we are back in topic 1, which is about number system, and we are still in the subtopic of real number. So before we go further in this topic, I will need you guys to know two basic symbols in number system. The first one is the symbol of subset, and the second one is the symbol of elements. Okay, both things are interrelated with one another. So let's say if I take Kuching, we know that Kuching is inside Sarawak. So that means Kuching is a subset of Sarawak. And in a bigger aspect, we know that Sarawak is a subset of Malaysia. That means Sarawak is inside Malaysia. And the elements of that notation is Kuching, Bau, Kabong, Sarike, Sibu, Miri, Muka, and everything. So remember that the first one is the symbol of subset, and the second one is the symbol of elements. Hi guys, now I'm walking home from work. Okay, so while walking, let's talk a bit about inequalities and set intervals. Inequalities are quite simple. There are only two main types of inequalities. The first one is smaller or bigger, or we can say it as less than or more than. And the second type of inequalities is less than or equal to, more than or equal to. So let's look at these trees. This short tree over here and the taller tree at the behind in the middle over there. The short tree is smaller than the tree in the middle, or we can use the other way around. The middle tree is bigger than the smaller tree. So we can use the symbol of inequality, bigger or smaller, in this situation. The idea of algebra is actually about pattern and representation. So instead of using long words, we can simplify it by using symbols. Okay, now what can we find here for us to talk about intervals? Okay, so there are two groups of intervals. The first one is bounded, which means it has limits. And the second one is unbounded intervals, which means the interval doesn't have limit. Okay, let's have a look at this pathway. Can you determine whether the road is bounded or not? For bounded intervals, there are basically 4 subtypes. The first one is closed bounded intervals, which means both sides of the limits are included. Now let's put our discussion in a mathematical way. Let's say x is a natural number. Remember, natural number begins from 1 and it goes upwards. And we say that the boundary is at most 3. So x can be 1, 2, or 3. So the sign that we use for at most is less than or equal to 3. And we can translate this statement into this number line. Next is the case for open bounded intervals. So if you are seeing here, now we are walking on this road in between the trees. The other way to say it is x is in between -1 and 5. That means the value of x can be any number in between -1 to 5, but it doesn't include -1 and 5. This is how we translate our long words into symbols. The summary for bounded intervals is the open bounded interval doesn't include the limit's value, and the closed bounded interval includes the limit's value. Now for the case of unbounded intervals. If I put it into our perspective, our lifetime is a closed bounded interval, which means it started with birth and it ends with death. But in between birth and death, we go through an infinite number of experiences. So our life experience begins from zero, the day that we were born. And then it keeps on growing as we have an endless numbers of choices that we can take and make throughout our life. Our life experience is an example of an unbounded interval. Here is the summary for unbounded intervals. It's nearly the same as the bounded one. It's just that the unbounded intervals do not have limits. Okay, guys, look up and see at the skies. Can you think whether the world around you is bounded or not? If it's bounded, how? And if it's not bounded, how? And perhaps we also want to check whether our perceptions and imaginations are bounded or not.